Hello everybody. This week's reading focuses on the theme of music and the life cycle. So if you think about your own life, you can probably anchor specific moments in your life to important pieces of music. For example, happy birthday at a birthday party, wedding music, or as the textbook introduces in the beginning of the chapter, Edward Elgar's Pomp and Circumstance is a very popular piece of music at graduations. So you probably heard that piece of music at your own high school graduation. You'll hear it again when you graduate college. And you'll likely hear it at any future graduations you have. So another thing that is important about music in the life cycle is this idea of childhood education. Think about the alphabet song, or the way that it's so much easier to memorize something through music and singing than it is just reciting. So that brings us to our first piece of music in the listening assignments folder, which is Sergei Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf. Now, this was designed as a piece of childhood education to introduce children to the orchestra and the idea of musical narration. So take a really careful listen to the introduction of this piece because the conductor actually goes through and gives you all the different characters represented by different pieces of the orchestra. So the flute represents the bird, and the duck is represented by the oboe, and so on. And the piece tells the story through these characters by means of musical narration. So listen really carefully to that introduction and try to follow along with your listening guide all of the different characters and themes that are happening in the story that are told musically. Carry that forward into your next piece in the listening assignments folder, Franz Schubert's Erlkönig. This piece is a little heavier than Peter and the Wolf, quite a bit darker. It's based on a poem by Goethe, and it tells a story through dialogue between a father and a son. And in the story, it's romantic era. They were fascinated by themes of death and the macabre, supernaturalism. So it's a fairly dark story, but there is a dialogue between a father and a son all the way through the poetry of the story. And the music changes character depending on who's speaking. So follow along with the listening guide that accompanies the reading in the reading assignments folder, the extra reading for this one. Follow along the listening guide and see if you can identify which character is speaking at different musical moments. Another interesting thing I think to note about this is a number of the performances you have in your listening assignments folder are sung by female performers, even though the two characters are male, the father and the son. So think about that. How is the story kept intact through the music and expressed in this way, these characters expressed musically? And also listen to the orchestral rendition of it and compare it to the piano version of it. Do you think one is more effective than the other at telling the story, or are they equally effective in different ways? The last piece of music in your listening assignments folder is Sita Kalyana. Now, this is a scene from the Ramayana, which is a just massive Hindu epic. And this particular scene tells the story of a wedding happening in the Ramayana. And I think what's interesting to notice about this one is this particular style that it's performed in is called Carnatic. So if you think back a couple of weeks ago when we listened to Hindustani classical music for Ravi Shankar, we were listening to North Indian music called Hindustani music, whereas now we're listening to South Indian or Carnatic music. So both of these styles have a lot of similarities, but they also have a lot of differences. And one of the primary differences between Hindustani or North Indian classical music and Carnatic or South Indian classical music is that Carnatic music is much more vocal based, whereas Hindustani music is more instrumental. Now, we've already seen through the other listenings that you can tell a story instrumentally. These characters are introduced through musical themes in Peter and the Wolf, or the father and the son's dialogue is differentiated through the music in the Erlkönig. But I think this is an interesting example as well of music told vocally, and the style fits that really well because Carnatic tends to emphasize vocal performance. So go through these listenings, listen carefully to everything with the listening guide. I think they'll, especially this week, be very helpful as you follow these different stories and narrations. Make sure to devote some good attention to the introduction to Peter and the Wolf so that you can follow along all the different orchestral characters. And have a lot of fun with this. All right, thanks. Let me know if you need anything.